On February 27th, the Pokémon Company might have very silently announced that the end of Pokémon cards is on the way. And no one is talking about it. But of course, one of the biggest stars of the Pokémon Presents was Pokémon Legends Z to A. Even though that game might have been the biggest announcement, the Pokémon Company spent the longest amount of time during the Pokémon Presents talking about Pokémon TCG Pocket. Admittedly, I don't play the TCG, but growing up, I absolutely adored collecting these cards. But before we dive in, I just want to quickly say two things. First off, this video is 100% just speculatory, and this is just talking about the physical cards themselves. I don't think the concept of Pokemon cards are going anywhere anytime soon. And secondly, if you're new here, hey, my name's Adrian, and I post weekly Nintendo videos. I cover a bunch of topics like rumors, news, and speculation, so if that sounds like your type of thing, please consider liking and subscribing, and without further ado, let's go right into the video. The first thing we need to talk about is who is the Pokémon Company? Well, the Pokémon Company is kind of divided in three sections. The first company that creates the first section of the Pokémon Company is Game Freak, and they develop all the mainline games. So most recently they are developing Pokémon Legends Z to A. The next company is Creatures Inc., and they are the ones responsible for making all the Pokémon cards. Then the third leg in the Pokémon Company is Nintendo themselves, and they help with the publication of the games. Whereas, I guess I should mention this too, there's also the Pokémon Company International, which is a subsidiary which helps localize the Pokémon products. So now that we know who does what is this Pokémon TCG Pocket game anyways? The game is about opening packs of cards, collecting them, and then using them to battle. There's not too much we can talk about the game so far because there's not that much information about it. But basically you will be able to open 2 free packs a day, and there is undoubtedly going to be microtransactions, so if you want to buy more, you'll most likely be able to buy more to open more per day. Some of the cards will be a little bit special, so you'll be able to actually zoom into the photo and see more of the world of the illustration itself. And the battles are not going to be like full-fledged Pokemon TCG battles like you'd see in competitions. It's going to be a slightly, and for lack of better words, dumbed down version, which I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing either. But they did emphasize how much effort goes into making these physical cards look amazing, and that they are really trying to replicate the same amount of effort to put them in the digital cards so they can be just as amazing. And honestly, if what they showed us in the trailer is accurate to how the game is going to be, I think, they might be onto something, because the cards actually really do look good. Like, you can tell they're high effort. One thing that really confused me though about this is that I felt like there was already an online TCG game, and turns out I was not only right, there's actually 2. But from what I've been seeing in my research, both of these games are janky to say the very least. And considering how janky the game does look and that it's about the Pokemon TCG, it's really easy to quickly point your finger at Creatures Inc. because they're in charge of making the cards, But in reality, it's not necessarily the case. Both of these games were actually outsourced products by Pokémon Company International, so really, Creatures Inc. has nothing to do with it. So the thing that makes Pokémon TCG Pocket stand out is that this is actually made by Creatures Inc. themselves, with a little bit of assistance from DNA, the people that make Pokémon Masters EX. In my own personal humble opinion, the game seems to be shaping up to be something pretty neat. But I'd like to step away from Pokemon for a second and use another game franchise to compare something that I've noticed. And by all means, these 2 franchises are on 2 different leagues of their own in popularity, so please just hear me out on this one. Personally, I'm a pretty big Fire Emblem fan. I've been playing for the greater part of 10 years now, but what a lot of new Fire Emblem fans might not realize is there used to be a Fire Emblem TCG. The Fire Emblem TCG was unpopular for 2 reasons. 1, it was exclusive to Japan when it was still active, and 2, at the end of the day, it's still Fire Emblem. I am not gonna sugarcoat it. I know Fire Emblem is still not the biggest series, but it is growing, so, little victories. The Fire Emblem cards started on June 25th in 2015 alongside Fire Emblem Fates in Japan, and on April 2nd, 2020, Intelligent Systems announced that Cifer would end with the 22nd expansion releasing in late 2020. And when the main producer of the Fire Emblem Cifer games, Ryuata Kawade, was asked, why was the game stopping, he replied this: "It was made to fill in the gaps between the mainline titles with more ways to enjoy Fire Emblem. Now, Fire Emblem Heroes now fills that role." Now, you could argue that Pokemon Masters EX was probably a better counterpart to Fire Emblem Heroes, but in the case of Fire Emblem, it was either Cifer or Heroes, but with how big Pokemon is, I think they can both have Pocket TCG and Masters. Now we enter the final part of the video, my speculations on this topic. In this new digital age, I can totally see that the Pokemon Company might be trying to limit their paper consumption. Not because it could be an ecological sustainability practice for them to explore, but to create more profit. This way, there's no cost associated to printing, whether it be ink, paper, manual labor, or shipping. All these costs could be avoided. But in terms of what the cost would be to just create an individual card, clearly the immersive cards that they're advertising that is going to be a big feature are going to cost more, just because, I mean, look at them, they're just so, much detail within them. But the typical cards that will be filling up the majority of the game are just going to be the one-for-one the same cost as if they were physical. But the price to physically print out all of these cards far outweigh, going the extra mile for a couple of cards per deck. So financially, it does make a lot of sense for the Pokemon Company to try to ease away from the physical media. Do I think the app will be able to replace the cards immediately? No, I think it might take between 5 to 10 years for it to get to that point, because the game kind of does feel like it's going to be half-baked at the beginning, because the only feature they're advertising at the moment is quick battles. And for the true die-hard TCG players, that's not what they're looking for. But if the app does pick up in popularity, there's nothing stopping them from adding the full TCG rules, later down the line. Also, as I mentioned earlier, this is going to be a mobile game, and that means it's inevitable that there's going to be aggressive microtransactions. Another thing I heavily suspect they will be doing with this app is instead of reprinting any type of card, they will just make all the decks available in the past available, on the app. That way, if you just, discover a card, let's say online that you really like, well, that way you can go on the app, look at an older deck that it might be in, and just kind of, spend money most likely to find the card you want. To which, I mean, if every deck ever created was available at all times that people can spend real life money on to buy, that's, pretty much guaranteed profit for the Pokemon Company. And if this app can be as successful as I think they're hoping it can be, I think it's going to lead into my final speculation. As we know, the mainline Pokemon games have kind of been rough recently, but I wonder if Creatures Inc. can create such a big profit off of this, and as a consequence making more money in profit for the Pokemon Company. I wonder if the Pokemon Company would try to take some of the profit, probably not all of it of course, and give it to Game Freak to try to make their games a bit better. Because of course all of this Pokemon business relies on the games. Every time Pokemon releases a new generation, in comes another 100 of new Pokemon that they can make another couple hundred cards with. But with all that being said, that's all I have for this video. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing, and let me know down in the comments, have you ever played Pokemon Masters EX? I know I originally just kind of downloaded it once, then I went to try to get Signa Leon, then I got him, was content, deleted the game, and never played it again. So, do you play? Let me know. Until next time, Waddell.